Have you ever thought about how skyscrapers and massive buildings are demolished? You might assume it's as simple as setting off a few explosions that cause the building to collapse in mere seconds. But the reality is far more complex. Demolitions require precision, detailed planning, and perfect coordination between engineers, architects, and demolition experts. But what happens when things don't go as planned? What happens when small mistakes lead to catastrophic failures? In this video, we'll take a look at 10 of the most infamous building demolitions that ended in disaster. These weren't just minor mistakes. Some of them caused massive delays, financial losses, and even life-threatening situations. From miscalculated explosions to unpredictable structural failures, each of these cases exposed critical flaws in planning, execution, and safety protocols. Number 10. The Ohio Edison Mad River Power Plant. The Mad River Power Plant in Springfield, Ohio, first opened in 1927, boasting a 20-megawatt steam turbine fueled by coal. After several upgrades, it supplied nearly a third of the town's electricity. But by 1981, rising concerns over pollution led to its closure. For nearly 3 decades, the structure stood abandoned, until 2010, when demolition crews finally moved in to bring it down and clear the land for redevelopment. At the heart of this demolition was the massive chimney stack, a towering structure that had to be taken down with precise explosive charges. The team conducted extensive surveys, carefully positioned the explosives, and timed the detonators. The demolition team failed to properly cut the rebar at the back of the stack, used more explosives than necessary, and employed delayed detonators, a disastrous combination. Instead of collapsing neatly in the planned direction, the chimney lurched backward in a completely unexpected and uncontrolled fall. Workers could only watch in horror as tons of debris crashed down, crushing 2 active turbines and severing 2 12,500-volt power lines. The result? More than 4,000 homes were plunged into darkness, and the destruction caused a staggering $19 million in damages. Number 9. The Pontiac Silverdome. Once an iconic landmark in Pontiac, Michigan, the Silverdome was a massive 83,000-seat stadium, the largest NFL venue for 25 years. Opened in 1975, it wasn't just home to the Detroit Lions. It hosted NBA games, FIFA World Cup matches, and even WrestleMania 3, which saw a record-breaking crowd. But when Ford Field opened in nearby Detroit, the Silverdome lost its purpose. After sitting abandoned for nearly a decade, several attempts were made to revitalize it. But by 2017, there was only one option left: demolition. The plan? A carefully staged implosion. The first phase was set to bring down the upper structure with strategically placed explosives. But when the big moment came in December 2017, something went horribly wrong. The charges detonated, smoke billowed into the air, but the Silverdome stood defiant. A catastrophic failure in the detonation process left a tenth of the explosives inactive, turning what should have been a spectacular implosion into a humiliating disaster. The demolition team assured the public that the structure would eventually collapse, but they had no idea when. To control the growing risk, crews returned the next day to finish the job, and over the next few months, the Silverdome was slowly torn apart. Number 8. The Australian Beer Silo. Australia is no stranger to beer production, with breweries scattered across the country. But in 2010, one demolition team near Brisbane seemed to have had a bit too much of the product themselves when they attempted to bring down a 50-year-old beer silo, only for it to defy gravity in the most spectacular way. The silo, once used to store malt for a nearby brewery, had become obsolete. The land was needed for a new transport link, and its removal was essential. The demolition experts devised a plan. 220 pounds of strategically placed explosives would bring the structure crashing down in a perfect implosion. When the charges detonated, the silo lurched forward and began to collapse, only to stop mid-fall. Instead of crumbling into rubble, it tilted precariously, leaning at a dramatic angle like some kind of industrial version of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Crews quickly removed additional structural supports, and in the end, all it took was a single push from an excavator to finally topple the silo. With the 4,400 tons of rubble left behind, the demolition crew still had a massive cleanup job ahead before the site could be repurposed. But one thing was certain: no one would forget the day Brisbane got its very own Leaning Tower. Number 7. St. Petersburg Sports and Concert Complex. For 4 decades, the St. Petersburg Sports and Concert Complex was a hub of entertainment in the Russian city, hosting international concerts, major sporting events, and cultural performances. Since its grand opening in 1980, it had welcomed millions of spectators, witnessing everything from tennis championships to legendary music acts. But as the years passed, the once iconic venue began to show its age. By early 2020, the decision was made to demolish the complex, making way for what was set to be the world's largest ice arena. Demolishing a massive structure like this isn't as simple as setting off explosives. Engineers must carefully analyze the building's structural integrity, identify load-bearing points, and strategically cut key connections to ensure a controlled collapse. But on this occasion, something went horribly wrong. As workers were in the process of separating the stadium's roof from its walls, disaster struck. Without warning, the entire structure gave way, sending thousands of tons of concrete and steel. Some managed to escape in the nick of time, but not everyone was so lucky. Tragically, one worker lost his life, and several others were injured in the unexpected catastrophe. This devastating incident was a grim reminder of just how unpredictable and dangerous demolition projects can be. Even with meticulous planning and highly skilled professionals. Number 6. The Turkish Flour Factory. When it comes to demolishing buildings, engineers rely on precise calculations to ensure a controlled collapse. But sometimes, structures have a mind of their own. And in 2009, a demolition in Turkey proved just how unpredictable these events can be. The site in question was an 82-foot-tall flour factory, originally built in 1928. For decades, it had been a key part of the local economy, but by the early 2000s, it had long been abandoned. Developers planned to clear the land for a brand-new shopping center. But there was a problem. Nobody knew exactly how the building had been constructed. Once explosives were carefully placed and detonated, everyone expected the factory to crumble neatly to the ground. But instead, the unexpected happened. One side of the building collapsed faster than the other, causing it to tilt dramatically. As it continued falling, it didn't just collapse, it flipped over completely onto its roof. Number 5. The Crimean Residential Building. Sevastopol, the largest city on the Crimean Peninsula, has long been a strategic and economic hub on the Black Sea. Following its annexation by Russia in 2014, authorities embarked on an aggressive redevelopment plan, targeting what they deemed to be illegally built residential buildings. As a result, demolition crews were sent in to tear down multiple structures, but one particular 10-story building refused to go down without a fight. By the end of 2014, explosives had been carefully placed inside the structure, and when they were detonated, a massive cloud of smoke engulfed the area. Everything seemed to be going as planned, until the dust settled. Experts later revealed that workers had deliberately used fewer explosives than usual to protect nearby buildings from potential damage. But this cautious approach backfired, leaving the building half demolished and dangerously unstable. Number 4. Dalhousie Generating Station. Located in New Brunswick, Canada, the Dalhousie Generating Station was a coal and oil-fired power plant that once played a crucial role in the region's energy supply. Opened in 1969, this 315-megawatt facility powered thousands of homes and businesses for over 4 decades. However, by 2012, the plant was deemed too costly to maintain, and despite strong opposition from workers who feared mass job losses, the decision was made to shut it down permanently. With the site no longer in use, demolition plans were drawn up to clear the area for future development, leading to one of the most unexpectedly stubborn demolitions in Canadian history, leading to an overhaul of the original plan. The second demolition attempt was scheduled a month later and involved additional explosive charges placed in more precise locations. This time, when the detonation was triggered, the entire structure crumbled as originally planned. Number 3. The Danish silo disaster. In April 2018, the people of Vordingborg, Denmark, gathered to witness a major transformation in their town's skyline. The event was supposed to be a controlled demolition of an old 173-foot-tall grain silo near the harbor, a structure that had stood for as long as anyone could remember. The silo, once an important part of the local economy, and the land it occupied was set to be redeveloped as part of a broader revitalization project for the old ferry town. Hundreds of spectators, including residents, city officials, and demolition experts, lined the streets in anticipation of a perfect takedown. The demolition crew had meticulously prepared for the event, placing explosives at key points around the base of the silo to ensure that it fell in a precise, controlled manner. To further direct the collapse, a large wedge was cut from the structure, allowing it to tip in the planned direction once the charges were detonated. Gasps of horror replaced the cheers of excitement as tons of concrete and debris slammed into the cultural center, which housed a public library and a music school. The force of the impact knocked through the front wall, causing significant structural damage and sending dust billowing into the surrounding streets. The scene quickly turned chaotic as emergency services rushed to assess the damage and ensure no one had been trapped inside. Number 2. The Leaning Tower of Dallas. In February 2020, an 11-story office building in Dallas, Texas, was scheduled for demolition to make way for a massive $2.5 billion development project featuring luxury apartments, office spaces, and entertainment venues. The demolition was expected to be a routine event, and hundreds of spectators gathered to witness the spectacle. As the countdown ended, powerful explosions shook the structure, sending dust and debris into the air. The building crumbled as planned, except for one unexpected survivor. The elevator shaft, built with reinforced concrete, refused to collapse. Instead, it remained standing at a dramatic tilt, creating an unintentional landmark that soon became known as the Leaning Tower of Dallas. The bizarre sight quickly went viral, drawing crowds of people who posed for photos and even started a petition to preserve the accidental monument. Some joked that Dallas had its own version of Italy's Leaning Tower of Pisa. However, city officials had no plans to keep the structure. It was too unstable to leave standing, and a wrecking ball was brought in to finish the job. Even then, the stubborn tower resisted, taking days of relentless pounding before it finally crumbled, allowing the city's new development project to move forward. Number 1. Liverpool's unbreakable towers. In the decades following World War II, the UK rapidly constructed high-rise residential blocks to address the urgent need for housing. While these structures served their purpose for generations, they eventually became outdated and were deemed unsuitable for modern living. As a result, cities across the country, including Liverpool, began removing these buildings to make way for new, more efficient developments. One such project in 2016 involved the demolition of two 14-story residential towers, known as Churchill House and Montgomery House. However, what was expected to be a routine demolition turned into an unexpected battle between man and concrete. On the first day, explosives were placed at key structural points around the building's foundations, and the charges were detonated in front of a crowd of onlookers. But instead of collapsing, both towers stood defiantly, completely unmoved. It was as if the buildings were challenging the demolition team to try harder. Undeterred, engineers returned the next day and attempted a second controlled blast. This time, Churchill House finally crumbled as expected, sending a massive cloud of dust into the air. But Montgomery House once again refused to fall, standing tall amidst the rubble of its fallen twin. By the third attempt, the team adjusted their strategy and set off another series of explosions. This time, a quarter of Montgomery House collapsed, yet most of the structure remained stubbornly intact. The demolition crew had reached their limit. If explosives couldn't bring it down, they had to resort to brute force. Heavy-duty cranes and cables were brought in to finish the job manually. Workers painstakingly chipped away at the building, pulling down its supports one by one. Floor by floor, the tower was finally reduced to rubble, but not without significantly delaying the demolition timeline. Demolition projects may seem straightforward, but in reality, they are complex engineering challenges that require careful planning and precise execution to ensure a safe collapse. However, as we've seen in this list, not all buildings go down without a fight, and some even become unexpected landmarks or turn into engineering disasters. From beer silos that leaned instead of falling to structures that remained standing despite tons of explosives, these events prove that engineering is not just an exact science. It's full of surprises. As technology advances and demolition techniques improve, there will always be the chance that a building defies its fate until the very last moment.